This is my tale, Camila, and how I came to realize that sometimes the family you select matters more than the one you are born into. The sound of my younger sister's laughing permeated our home as I grew up. According to our parents, Sarah was the perfect child who could do no wrong. Me, I was only present. As Sarah performed another spontaneous fashion display for our adoring parents, I would see her dancing about the living room. She proclaimed, posing, "I'm going to be a famous model one day." Dad would give a hearty clap. "My daughter is that. Before we know it, you'll be featured on magazine covers." I would roll my eyes and go to my room to read a book on economics or finance. I understood early on that I wanted more from life than merely being attractive. The gap between Sarah and myself simply deepened as we got older. While I concentrated on my schoolwork, she was all about males and parties. I hoped that my parents would recognize the importance of my efforts when it came time for me to go to college. During supper one evening, Dad said, "We'll pay for your first 2 years. After that, you're on your own." I was shocked to hear that. "How about Sarah, though? Will you also force her to pay for her own education?" My mother gave me a severe look. "Your sister is gifted in a variety of ways. We must encourage her aspirations." I went to a different city for college after packing my bags. I put myself into my studies throughout the day since I was determined to become a financial analyst. I took on any tasks I could find at night, including teaching and waitressing. I saved every cent I made for my tuition. It was not simple. On certain evenings, I would sob myself to sleep because I was so tired and questioned whether it had all been worthwhile. But I wasn't going to give up. I was aware that education was the key to a better life, one free from the unending comparisons and letdowns of my upbringing. I saved up enough money for tuition by my 3rd year, and I was fortunate enough to receive a full scholarship for my senior year, contingent on my academic achievement. Mom and Dad, take that. Sarah, meantime, was enjoying life at home. After a semester, she had left community college, saying it was limiting her style. When I last heard from her, she was still living with our parents while juggling part-time jobs and modeling engagements. I decided to remain in the city where I had gone to college when I graduated. It was more like home than the house I grew up in. My finance degree and the excellent feedback I received from my instructors helped me secure a position at a prominent company. Additionally, it wasn't entry-level. They saw my ability and offered me a role with actual responsibility. Like I had in college, I poured myself into my job with all my might. Long hours, early mornings, doing whatever it needed to establish my worth and demonstrate that I did. "Kami, that deal you closed last week was impressive." My employer called me into his office one day. "Keep this up, and you'll be looking at a promotion before you know it." I smiled proudly. I had put a lot of effort into achieving this goal, being recognized for my own worth rather than by comparison to others. Around this time, I got to know Jake. At a nearby coffee shop, we were both reaching for the same finance magazine when our hands came into contact. I realize it's corny, but there are moments when life truly does unfold like a romantic comedy. "Sorry," he responded with a kind grin. "You take it." I demand, "Why don't we have coffee to discuss it?" I proposed, startling myself with my audacity. Before I knew it, 5 years had passed quickly. That coffee date evolved into supper, which in turn led to weekend vacations. Jake was nice, driven, and supportive of my career. Everything I could have ever hoped for in a companion. In the meantime, my career took off. Every successful transaction resulted in incentives and fresh chances. I had saved enough money for a down payment on an apartment and a dependable automobile by the time I was 32. It wasn't ostentatious, but it was mine, acquired by my own tears and labor. Jake proposed to me at a handmade meal in my apartment one evening. I couldn't help but reflect on how my life had changed since I was a youngster as he put the ring on my finger. This person loved me for who I was, not for what he desired me to be. We made the decision to save money for a lavish wedding. We had both put in a lot of effort to get here, so why not have a lavish celebration? I told Jake I want it to be perfect. One evening when we were browsing wedding websites. A day that shows how far we've come. Jake gave me a hand squeeze. Love, do anything you want. You are deserving. I threw myself into wedding planning with the same enthusiasm I'd shown in my career. I subscribed to bridal magazines, joined online forums, and created mood boards. Every spare moment was spent dreaming up our perfect day. Meanwhile, life back in my hometown hadn't changed much. Sarah was still living with our parents, now with a baby in tow. The father, some guy she dated for a few months, had disappeared as soon as he'd heard the news. "Your sister needs our help," Mom said during one of our rare phone calls. "It's not easy being a single mother." I bit my tongue, holding back the retort that Sarah had made her own choices. Instead, I simply said, "I'm sure she'll figure it out." "That's the problem with you, Camilla," Mom sighed. "You've always been so cold towards your family." The accusation stung, but I refused to let it get to me. I'd spent too many years trying to win their approval. Now I was focused on building my own life, my own family with Jake. One ordinary Tuesday, as I was reviewing some financial reports at work, my phone buzzed with an email notification. The sender's name made my heart skip a beat, Sarah. With a mixture of curiosity and apprehension, I opened it. What I saw made my blood run cold. It was a scanned copy of our parents' will. As I skimmed through the legal jargon, one fact became crystal clear. Sarah was the sole heir to everything our parents owned. My hands shaking, I dialed my mother's number. She picked up on the third ring. "Mom, what's this that Sarah sent me?" I demanded, trying to keep my voice steady. "Why am I not included?" There was a pause on the other end of the line. When she spoke again, her tone was defensive. "Camila, you're doing well for yourself. You have a good job, an apartment, a car. You don't need our money." "That's not the point," I argued, my voice rising. "I'm your daughter too. Don't I deserve?" "Your sister is struggling," Mom cut me off. "She's a single mother. She has no job. We can't leave her with nothing." The conversation went on like this for a while, with me trying to understand their decision and Mom defending it. In the end, I hung up, feeling hurt, angry, and completely dismissed. Over the next few weeks, I distanced myself from my family. I stopped calling, stopped responding to messages. It hurt, but I told myself it was for the best. I had my own life now, my own family with Jake. I didn't need their approval anymore. But just as I was starting to feel at peace with my decision, life threw another curveball my way. It was a quiet Sunday afternoon. Jake and I were lounging on the couch, flipping through wedding venues online, when my phone rang. It was my mother again. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Hello, Camila." My mother's voice was strained, almost panicked. "I need surgery urgently. The insurance won't cover it all, and we need money." I closed my eyes, bracing myself for what was coming next. "How much?" $22,000, she said quietly. The amount hit me like a punch to the gut. It was a large chunk of what Jake and I had saved for our wedding. I glanced at Jake, who was watching me with concern. "I need to think about this," I told her. "I'll call you back." After I hung up, I filled Jake in on the situation. He listened thoughtfully, then said, "It's your decision, babe. But if it were my parents, I'd want to help. I nodded, torn between my lingering resentment and the desire to do the right thing. Finally, I called my mother back. "I can help," I said, "but I want to do this properly. I'll open a bank account and transfer the money there. You can pay me back gradually." To my surprise, my mother balked at the idea. "No, no, we need cash. Can you bring it in person?" Something about her insistence on cash set off alarm bells in my head. "Mom, I can't take time off work right now, but I can pay the hospital directly if you give me the details." "No," she said quickly. "I mean, I don't understand all these modern banking things. Please, Camila, cash would be easiest." I was confused and a little suspicious, but I pushed those feelings aside. This was my mother's health we were talking about. "Okay," I said finally. "I can't come myself, but Jake can bring the money. Is that all right?" She agreed, and we made the arrangements. As I hung up, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't quite right, but I pushed those thoughts aside. After all, what could possibly go wrong? Jake left early the next morning, a briefcase containing $22,000 in cash securely tucked under his arm. I kissed him goodbye, a knot of anxiety twisting in my stomach. I asked him to be careful and to call me as soon as he was done. He nodded, giving me a reassuring smile, promising he had everything under control. Hours later, my phone buzzed with a text from Jake informing me of his arrival. I held my breath, waiting for his call. When it finally came, Jake's voice was filled with a mix of emotions as he recounted the events of his visit. Upon arriving at my parents' house, Jake found that neither of my parents was home. Instead, he was greeted by my sister, Sarah. Jake explained the purpose of his visit, stating that he had brought money intended for my mother. Sarah informed him that our mother had been admitted to the hospital and that our father had gone to visit her. She explained that they were borrowing this money to pay for our mother's operation. Despite the unexpected turn of events, Jake handed over the money to Sarah. After completing this task, he quickly excused himself and left. When Jake returned home, I was eager to hear about his trip. As he walked through the door, I rushed to greet him. "Thank you for doing this, Jake. I'm sure it will help my mom a lot." "There's something else," Jake added, looking a bit uncertain. Sarah wasn't alone in the house. There was a guy there, looked like he was living there. I blinked in surprise. A guy living there? Mom never mentioned Sarah had a boyfriend, let alone one who moved in. Jake shrugged. Yeah, he seemed pretty comfortable. I was surprised too. I sat back, processing this new information. It was strange that my mother hadn't mentioned Sarah's boyfriend. But I brushed it off as just another example of our poor communication. "Well, I'm just glad we could help with Mom's operation," I said finally. "I hope she recovers quickly." As we sat there on the couch, I felt a mix of emotions. I was worried about my mother's health, but also grateful that we had been able to help. The presence of Sarah's boyfriend at my parents' house was unexpected, but I decided not to dwell on it. After all, my family's well-being was what mattered most right now. Every day I'd call to check on my mother's progress, my heart racing each time until I heard her voice. "The operation went well, dear," she'd say, her tone reassuring. "We're so grateful for your help. I'm feeling better already." Relief washed over me with each call, but a nagging feeling persisted in the back of my mind. Something felt off, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it. A month passed, and I decided it was time to see for myself how my mother was doing. I took some time off work and made the journey back to my childhood home. When I arrived, I was surprised to find my mother already up and about, looking normal. There were no visible signs of her recent surgery, no hints of the illness that had allegedly threatened her life just weeks ago. "Mom," I started hesitantly, How are you feeling after the operation?" She waved her hand dismissively, avoiding my gaze. "Oh, much better. No need to worry about all that now. Would you like some tea?" I wanted to press further, but seeing her bustling around the kitchen, I decided not to upset her. Maybe she just didn't want to relive the ordeal. My father was there too, doting on my young niece. Sarah, however, was conspicuously absent. "Where's Sarah?" I asked, watching my niece play with her toys. My mother's face lit up. "Oh, Sarah's doing so well. She's got a job now. Can you believe it? Works 7 days a week, even spends some nights there. Such a hard worker." I couldn't hide my shock. This didn't sound like the sister I knew at all. Duh, that's quite a change. "People can surprise you," my mother said, a strange smile playing on her lips. I spent 2 days with my parents, playing with my niece, and trying to reconnect with my family, but something felt off. There was an undercurrent of tension, whispered conversations that would stop when I entered the room. Finally, it was time for me to head back home. As I drove, my mind wandered, trying to make sense of this strange visit. On a whim, I pulled over at a rest stop and decided to check social media. I hadn't bothered in a while, given how distant I had become from my family. As I scrolled through Sarah's profile, my heart stopped. There in vibrant color were photos of my sister in a white gown, beaming next to a man I recognized as the one Jake had seen at the house. The caption read, "Just married. Thanks, Mom and Dad, for the amazing wedding and dream honeymoon." The pieces suddenly fell into place with sickening clarity. The money, the rushed need for cash, the evasive answers about the operation. It had all been a lie. My vision blurred as the reality of the situation hit me. Without thinking, I flung open the car door and stumbled out, gasping for air. The cool breeze did little to calm the storm of emotions raging inside me. Betrayal, anger, hurt, they all swirled together as I leaned against my car, trying to steady myself. With shaking hands, I pulled out my phone and dialed my mother's number. Each ring felt like an eternity until finally she answered. "Camila, is everything all right?" Her voice was casual, as if nothing was wrong. "Mom," I managed, my voice trembling. "I need you to be honest with me. What happened to the money we sent for your operation?" There was a long pause on the other end of the line. When she spoke again, her tone had changed. "Camila, you have to understand. There was no operation. We gave the money to Sarah for her wedding." The confirmation hit me like a physical blow. "How could you?" I whispered. "Your sister finally met a good man," my mother explained, her voice taking on a defensive edge. "We couldn't leave her without a proper wedding gift. This was her chance at happiness." Tears streamed down my face as I spoke. "Do you have any idea how hard I worked for that money? How many nights I stayed up? How many weekends I gave up? Jake and I were saving that for our own wedding." There was a moment of silence before my mother responded, her voice cold and indifferent. "You're smart, Camila. You can always earn more." Her callous response sparked a fire of anger within me. "I want the money back," I demanded. "All of it, now." To my shock, my mother laughed. It was a harsh, mirthless sound that sent chills down my spine. "Oh, Camila," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "You can't prove you gave us any money." "What?" I gasped. "Jake brought it to you. He gave it to Sarah." "Did he now?" My mother's voice was sickeningly sweet. "That's not how I remember it. If you try to take this to court, I'll tell them your boyfriend is a fraud, that he took the money for himself and never gave us a cent." I felt like I was going to be sick. "You wouldn't," I challenged. "It's your word against ours, dear. And let's face it, Who would believe the daughter who's barely spoken to her family in years over her poor, struggling sister and her devoted parents? Before I could respond, the line went dead. I stared at my phone in disbelief, my mother's words echoing in my ears. The depth of their betrayal was staggering. Not only had they lied to me and stolen from me, but now they were threatening to paint Jake as a criminal if I tried to get the money back. I slumped against my car, my legs no longer able to support me. How had it come to this? My own family, the people who were supposed to love and support me unconditionally, had manipulated and betrayed me in the worst possible way. I stumbled through our apartment door, emotionally drained and still reeling from the conversation with my mother. Jake was there in an instant, concern etched across his face. "Camila, what happened?" he asked, guiding me to the couch. Through tears, I recounted everything: the wedding photos, the phone call, my mother's cruel words and threats. Jake listened intently, his arms around me providing silent support. When I finished, Jake took a deep breath. "I had a feeling something wasn't right about that whole situation," he said softly. "That's why I took some precautions." Jake stood up and retrieved his laptop. "I bought a hidden camera before I went to your parents' house," he explained. "I had a hunch we might need proof of what happened." My eyes widened as Jake pulled up a video file. There on the screen was Jake handing over the cash to Sarah, clear as day. We could hear Sarah counting the money and stating it was for our mother's operation. "Jake," I whispered, "you're brilliant." He squeezed my hand. "With this, we can prove what really happened. Your mother can't deny it or threaten to accuse me of fraud." The next day, we met with a lawyer. After reviewing our evidence, she was confident we had a strong case. "It won't be a quick process," she warned us. "These things take time. But with this video, I believe we'll win." As we left the lawyer's office, Jake turned to me. "You know, we don't have to put our lives on hold while this plays out," he said. "Why don't we get married now?" I looked at him, surprised. "But what about the big wedding we were planning?" Jake shook his head. "That doesn't matter. What matters is us starting our life together. We don't need a lavish party for that." Over the next few weeks, we planned a small, intimate ceremony. It wasn't the grand affair we'd originally envisioned, but as I stood there exchanging vows with Jake, surrounded by our closest friends, I realized this was perfect. There was a noticeable absence: my family. I hadn't called them, hadn't told them about the wedding. As much as it hurt, I knew it was for the best. As Jake and I shared our first dance as a married couple, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. Yes, there was still a legal battle ahead, and the pain of my family's betrayal was still fresh. But here in this moment, surrounded by people who truly loved and supported me, I felt hope for the future. Months passed, and our lawsuit against my mother finally went to court. As we presented our evidence, including Jake's video recording, I could see the shock and disbelief on the judge's face. My mother's attempts to paint us as liars crumbled in the face of irrefutable proof. The day the verdict was announced, my phone rang. It was my mother. "How dare you?" she hissed, her voice dripping with venom. "After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us? You ungrateful child." I remained silent as she ranted, listing off every perceived sacrifice they'd made for me growing up. Her words, once capable of cutting me to the core, now felt hollow. "I hope you're happy," she spat. "As of this moment, you are no longer my daughter. You're dead to me." The line went dead before I could respond. I stood there, phone in hand, feeling a mix of pain and surprisingly relief. The court ordered my mother to repay the $22,000. I later learned she had to take out a loan to cover it. Life moved on. Jake and I focused on our careers and our life together, leaving the drama of my family behind. But news still trickled in through mutual acquaintances. Sarah's marriage, it seemed, was far from the fairy tale she'd envisioned. She and her husband stayed with our parents, turning the house into a constant party zone. Neighbors complained about the noise and drunken behavior. It all came to a head when Sarah's husband, in a drunken rage, tried to kick my parents out of their own home. The police were called, and the ugly truth of their situation was laid bare for all to see. When Sarah lost custody of her daughter as a result of her careless actions, it was the last straw. After seeing the devastation Sarah had caused, my parents expelled her and her spouse. In an effort to provide their granddaughter with the secure environment Sarah was unable to offer, they brought her in. My phone rang with a familiar number just when I believed that chapter of my life was over. I replied against my better judgment. "Camilla." I hadn't heard my mother's voice so gentle in a long time. "You were missed," she remarked. Waiting for the other shoe to drop, I remained silent. It took very little time. She went on, "We need your assistance in raising your niece. We are not as youthful as we once were, and it is difficult." I felt a wave of déjà vu as she said. Indeed, history was being repeated. They were attempting to persuade me to take care of Sarah's child, even though they had previously preferred Sarah above me. "I apologize," I stated firmly. "I am unable to assist you." My mother objected, saying, "But she's your niece." "Do you not value family?" I inhaled deeply. In all of this, my niece is innocent, and I wish her well in life. But you're still the same. You're still attempting to use me to correct your errors. I refuse to do it. Don't give me another call. After hanging up, I blocked her phone as well as my father's and Sarah's right away. I felt a burden leave my shoulders as I put the phone down. Later that night, Jake discovered me gazing out at the city lights from the balcony. He put his arms around me and said, "Is everything all right?" I reclined in his arms. I was surprised by how much I meant it when I said, "Yeah, I believe it is at last." Watching the world pass by, we stood in cozy stillness. I reflected on the hardships, betrayals, and difficult lessons I had learned along the way that had led me here. However, I also considered the strength I had discovered, the love I had developed with Jake, and the life we were building together.